Hello, hello.
Yes, sir.
You can hear me. Can we start or we wait for a couple of minutes? Hello, should we start or wait for a couple of minutes?
So we can start.
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, we have a then we get ahead. Okay, so we have a small topic today, right? So it's basically I think we should try to may have a good understanding. Now, basically, we'll be covering the clinical aspect of urethritis, just a glimpse, and we focus on the Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Okay, So at this time, if you're doing an overview of the, we do overview of the various bacteria. I think which category of bacteria would you put to be the smallest one? You have various categories, like gram positive, cocci, gram negative cocci, then we have gram positive bacilli, gram negative bacilli, then other categories. Which is the smallest category as far as the bacteriology is concerned? Huh? Which category has the least number of pathogenic microbes? So you have basically gram positive, you have gram negative. Okay. In each of them, basically the categories that we have either cocci or bacilli. These are the basic categories, and some are coming actually in the, you can say, in the categories which are atypical. So which is the smallest category? Which category has the smallest number of pathogenic microbes? So actually, I'm just trying to make you understand so that you get onto the things. Which is the smallest category? We have a small lecture. You can
Negative.
interact. Okay,
Okay.
What? What category has a
Gram
small?
negative. Okay.
Gram negative cocci. Okay, so that has just a couple of pathogenic microbes, and some of them actually come in the hana. Some of them are like hana. They come. We should just have an outline. Okay, so that's one thing we see. So we are when we cover up Neisseria gonorrhoeae, the other important in the gram negative cocci is the Neisseria meningitidis. Okay, so at the outside, okay, so while we are covering these basically in this GNC gram negative cocci, we basically focus on basically these two. Okay, we have the Neisseria meningitidis, Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Then actually microbes, they have one very interesting thing is that many actually come in miscellaneous categories, different categories. So can you tell me one microbe which comes in this category and also comes in other category, because many of them are actually variable, okay? Their shape varies, and sometimes the gram reaction also varies. So some of them actually are little controversial, but I think at least we can appreciate while we are finishing your course in microbiology. We can have a little thing. What are some of the controversial, one of the controversial organisms which comes in this category, comes in others also? Huh? This slightly difficult. Just tell me, because we all make list of these microbes and in the different categories. So which is a microbe which might be coming in GNC also, might also come in gram negative bacilli also. It's a important, it's an important nosocomial agent. Hmm? One of the commonest nosocomial agents in the hospital setups, in the ICUs. The name starts with A. Huh? ACI. Any guesses? Huh? Which is a microbe that might Acinetobacter.
Fascinating.
Okay. So some if you see some textbooks, you'll find Acinetobacter, Bowmani complex coming in GNC. A lot of people place it in miscellaneous. So you should understand actually many of these organisms, they have a lot of uh, variability in the morphology. Okay, so Acinetobacter comes in this category. So at least it's gram negative, but shape might be cocci, might be bacilli. So you should have an overview. Okay, you should see that this type of a diagnostic confusion or complication might be coming in where you're sitting in the labs, and you should also know from an examination point of view this type of a thing could be there. Okay, so that much about the HANA beginning. Then, so when we take up Neisseria chondri, in the first, the clinical lesion that we are concerned should be very clear. Okay, so this is the HANA picture which is depicting a profuse purulent discharge per urethra. Okay, now this is actually a classical picture. Okay, anybody comes with this, we'll be suspecting the person to be having urethritis, or you can be saying a lower urinary tract infection. And so this is a typical picture, but some of times, like you have chronic urethritis, the discharge may not be very obvious. Okay, the patient might be presenting with like irritation or some other presentation like it could be something else. Okay, so this is a classic picture. The challenge actually lies when we have to do a sampling for a case who actually has atypical presentation. So while we're dealing, that's the clinical picture that should be in your mind when we deal with Neisseria gondry. Okay. Now, basically, you should understand urethritis. We have basically two categories. We have two categories in urethritis. One is the gonococcal urethritis, and second is the non-gonococcal urethritis. Okay. So from your examination, you should know when you get a question or something, if it's not clear, if somebody says yes urethritis, then you should know that we basically make a categorization of gonococcal urethritis and NGU. Okay, so it depends how you are asked. You have to be addressing the thing adequately. Okay, I think the lecture on your non-gonococcal urethritis will be taken tomorrow, so I don't focus on that. Is it okay? So, but actually we can just have a fast overview. Chlamydia trachomatis. This is a picture in the cell line showing the inclusion bodies. That's chlamydia. That's the life cycle. This I think you can ID. This is ID. This is actually budding yeast cells, gram positive organisms. This could be in the atypical. That's the growth on the STA. So this is Trichomonas vaginalis. Then we come on to the today's topic. Okay, so we have a clinical scenario on which we will be trying to focus or put certain things around that. Okay, so volunteer for this clinical picture that we are discussing today. Who will volunteer for this clinical profile? I think I just want to make something very obvious. Once you participate, the thing becomes real. Okay, who will volunteer to read this clinical profile? First, volunteers for this. Mehak Agarwal, is she listening? Mehak Agarwal? Mehak Agarwal, is she listening? If you don't respond, then I'll put you absent. Mehak Agarwal, are you listening? Hello? Mehak Agarwal? No? Then next, Ina Yashanshi.
Yes, sir.
Please read the clinical problem for us, for your batchmates.
A 20-year college-going male student, Shahid, reported to the medical OPD with complaints of burning micturition, dysuria, and profuse seropurulent urethral discharge. A history of having sexual relation with 3 female partners in the past 3 months was elicited. A gram stain of the urethral discharge revealed PMNs with intracellular diplococci. Urine culture did not reveal any pathogens.
So what's the differential diagnosis that you make? It's obvious, but one thing you should know, ask me, why the urine culture did not reveal any pathogens? Can you let me know? Why the urine culture did not reveal any pathogens? I'm just trying to make you understand certain things. Why the urine culture did not reveal any pathogens? Although it's a urethritis, it's an infection of the urethra, you having pus cells, I just want to make you Hannah clear certain things. Why? You or anybody else. It is small. We have a small class. I just want to make some things clear. Okay. Why the urine culture did not reveal any pathogens? Fast. We are in the last Hannah in the last phase of microbiology. Fast. Question open to everybody. Just because we just got to make some sense out of this. Fast. See, when we talk about the complaints, burning, micturition, dysuria, discharge, they obviously point to a lower UTI, not a upper UTI. Then urine culture, just let me know why we did not have any pathogens. Fast, जल्दी बताओ. Ishra, is she listening?
They
हाँ
were
बताओ,
lost in the urine.
हाँ.
Maybe they were lost in the urine. I mean, when.
Why? Just say it loudly. I couldn't get you.
So maybe it's because of the lower. It's
Nana, there's
lower
so much
urinary.
discharge coming, so much pus coming. Why it is not getting? I just want, why it's not getting? Urine culture is not revealing pathogens. You have pus cells. You can see the microbes also. Diplococci in them. Why it is not there? Why it's not coming? Because this organism is a very fastidious one. Okay, it's a fastidious one. Okay, it requires enriched media. Okay, and okay, your point also taken. Might be another, might be and the patient has taken something or something. But main thing you should understand is, unless we have a specific diagnosis, if we don't put on the right type of the media, because routinely Hana, we don't look for gonococci. Okay, we don't look for gonococci unless the clinician gives a feedback that he's suspecting that thing. Okay, so you put Hana media like chocolate agar and some of the enriched media with some of the antimicrobials so that you can inhibit the other microbes. Okay, so that's the setting you should understand when you become interns and houses when you're getting patients. So this is going to be a clinical scenario. Okay, so that thing should be very obvious. Now this is a picture I think you'll see in your practical. So you have these many PMNs, many pus cells. Okay, right? And the thing that you got to be seeing out here is these inclusions inside. These are actually diplococci, diplococci or gram-negative cocci in pairs. So majority of them you see inside the PMNs. You also might, if you're seeing a thing, you might also be seeing them outside the PMNs. Okay, and the important thing as a clinician or as a microbiologist is that you got to be distinguishing this entity from many times. You have the granules in these pulse cells. So you should be able to not confuse with the granules. You should be able to see it differently, that these are basically microbes or bacteria. Okay, that's the challenge. So this is a classical thing you might be getting in your practical scenario like this, or also in a theory. Okay, so another thing you should know is when we are seeing in this low power, okay, a picture of a gram stain smear. Let's say this smear could also have been a CSF. Okay, so in that scenario, actually, we cannot really make a distinction whether the gram-negative diplococci is actually a Neisseria meningitidis or a Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Okay, basically just looks like a GNDC. Okay, that's one thing you should know. But with the clinical scenario, obviously, this is Neisseria gonorrhoeae. So this is a picture, that shows, that's the illustration, how you actually, differentiate the Neisseria gonorrhoeae from the Neisseria meningitidis. Both are actually diplococci, but the thing that you should know is in Neisseria gonorrhoeae, basically the diplococci facing each other, they have concavities. Okay, the sides facing like these two, they have concavities. And if it's a Neisseria meningitidis, then they have a plano-convex surface. Okay, is that point clear? So that's the thing. If you are you cannot see it very easily on a microscopic, but if you are doing illustration, if you're expert, so that's the difference you should understand. The sides of the cocci facing each other, they are concave. Okay, they are concave. That's the important thing that you should know. So provisional diagnosis, I think we already covered. This is basically urethritis from the clinical picture, no problems, and most likely due to Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Okay, if you see the historical aspect, first described by Neisser in 1879 in the exudates. Now, the important thing as a microbiologist, as a clinician, you should know is that you have to collect a proper urethral sample. Like in this case that we are showing you the clinical case, it's very easy. There's a lot of profuse thing which is coming out which you can take easily. But many times the exudate is not very clear. Okay, the exudate is not very clear. Then you have to know how exactly to collect a urethral specimen. Because if you don't collect a proper urethral specimen, then your diagnosis is not going to get done. Okay. So what we do is we take a flexible swab and we put it in the urethra about 4 centimeters inside. We rotate twice before removing. Anybody? Why we are rotating twice? I think I should make you understand. Why we have, once we put the swab inside, why did we rotate twice before removing this? Fast, give me a feedback fast. Why do we rotate about 2 times before we remove it? जल्दी बताओ. हाँ? Bhavya is she listening? Bhavya?
Yes, sir.
हाँ बताओ. Why did we rotate twice before removing out the swab?
So to get a good amount of sample.
Not a good. If the good amount was there, then it would. We needn't had put the urethral swab inside. Usually, in many, like I was telling you, in the chronic cases and many atypical cases, the amount of the discharge is very little. Okay, so we want to rotate so that the swab makes a close contact with the urethra in the mucosa outside, and we are able to at least have some material. Okay, if it was good, then we didn't have to do this thing. It's only if it's not there, so the idea is that we at least are able to collect some material which we can be doing a diagnosis. Another thing you should know is you should not let the patient urinate at least 1 hour before collection of the sample. This is also obvious. If he passes the urine, whatever material is there is going to get gone away with the urine. Okay, so that's the technical aspect that you should know about the urethral swab. Then the clinical profile of the Neisseria gonorrhoeae, you should be knowing one thing is that we can see this in categories like in men, in women, in children. Okay, what's the profile? Okay, now in men you should know acute gonorrhea, like the picture I told you, is one of the most distinctive ones. Sometimes the case also might have epididymitis or prostatitis. Then other lesions also sometimes may occur sometimes. Okay, you can have proctitis, it can spread to other places, meningitis. In women, you should understand is that mostly the typical presentation is not there. The women might be presenting like a pelvic inflammatory disease. Okay, there could be other lesions. Anybody can tell me what's the common presentation like a PID, pelvic PID? What's like a PID, pelvic inflammatory disease? How does it present like in women? So it means is basically any of the reproductive structures could be involved in the inflammation in otherwise. Okay, so that could be a presentation. Okay, then you can also have in both the sexes, you can have pharyngitis, you can have proctitis, then you can also have keratitis. These are uncommon presentations in both the sexes. In children, you should remember ophthalmia neonatum, that is the neonate which is born, might have eye infection, conjunctivitis. Okay, so these are the profile that you should know about Neisseria gonorrhoeae in men, women, in children. Okay, so that's the overview of the clinical profile presentation. So then a little bit about the microscopic features that you should be knowing is, like I always tell you, should always be able to categorize in the final stage of your exam the essential findings. Okay, so like I told you, for GNDC, the importance comparison that you should be able to make is between Neisseria meningitidis and Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Okay, now both are strictly aerobic, both grow at 37. Neisseria gonorrhoeae might have optimal temperature about 1 degree less because it's on the genital organisms. Then both require CO2. The time might, the Neisseria gonorrhoeae might require 1 more day. Then both are cocci in pairs, gram stain negative, picture I already told you. Now regarding the capsule, you should know is Neisseria menditis has a polysaccharide capsule, okay? And this has got a polyphosphate capsule. Anybody, what's the significance of this capsular composition? First, what's the significance of this capsular composition that I'm just telling you right now? Hmm? बताओ कौन बताएगा? Ishra, is she listening? Ishra, Ishra, are you listening? Are you there? Anybody else? Fast batao. We got to take the right message across. Why I'm describing this capsular composition out here? Fast, jaldi batao.
So difference in capsular antigen.
So what's the significance? What's the diagnostic and what's the clinical significance of the composition? Fast. I think you have done many of these things. Now you should be able to tell me why I put it in a table like this. Jaldi batao.
Sir, antigen detection test में अलग
Okay, so if you want to do a rapid diagnostic, let's say of the meningitis in the CSF, then we look for the antigen, this presence. Okay, if you want to do antigen detection in the secretion, then this is the thing that we are looking for. And then finally, if you want to make a vaccine, you got to be making of the various polysaccharides for a meningitis vaccine. Gonorrhea vaccine we don't have, but if you are trying to in the process, we have to actually vary the composition of this capsule. Okay, so it's got that significance. Okay, motility, both are non-motile, don't have spores. So that's about the microscopic and the other characteristics of Neisseria gonorrhea. Now I put this meningitis, you should be able to relate with the related organism. Biochemical reactions you should know is that basically Neisseria gonorrhea only ferments glucose with only acid production, no gas production. Like you have a lot of gas production in the Enterobacteriaceae. So in this case, you have just like one of these sugar tubes showing a yellow color. So only in this case, glucose is fermented. Okay. And another thing you should know about the biochemical reactions is when we are making the sugars, because these are fastidious organisms, the sugar composition must have the serum inside. Okay, must have the serum. Okay, otherwise the microbe is not going to grow. Is that okay? Then a little bit about the cultural characteristics. Like I was telling you, you should see whenever we are seeing any microbe, how does it grow? Does it grow in basal media? What's the picture on the enriched media? Any selective media that's required? And what are the characteristics of the microbe? Okay. So Neisseria gonorrhoeae, like I told you in the beginning, no growth will occur on a basal media because it's a fastidious organism. So you need blood agar. You might find small translucent colonies which might be having some morphotypes, my 5 types, but the better media for this would be a chocolate agar. Okay, it might not come on a blood agar. McConkey, obviously no growth because it doesn't have any of the things which can enrich. Selective media I should know is a Thier-Martin media with the different antibiotics. Okay, so when we use Thier-Martin is if your sample is likely contaminated with other bacteria. So we basically want the other microbes to be inhibited, and we just want the Neisseria gonorrhoeae to be there. Okay. Then the diagnostic criteria when you do about lab diagnosis, this is like catalase positive, oxidase positive. Then sugar fermentation, I already told you. Basically, only glucose is fermented only with acid and not with any gas. Okay. So this is from a lab diagnosis. When we talk about the characteristics, you should be knowing this in that level. Then next thing is what's the sensitivity? Somebody says I just want to do a gram stain for diagnosing a gonocoeurethritis in males. You should know in males the sensitivity is pretty high, okay, 95%. But if you compare with the females, you should know the positivity is very less because the discharge is not there. And second problem out there is many times the smears get contaminated with the other bacterial flora because collection is not very easy, and usually the site is colonized with the other microbes. Then this is actually an overview of the lab diagnosis. Okay? This is an overview of the lab diagnosis, Neisseria gonorrhoeae. This column deals with the samples that we should have to be focusing on. Then this one with the HANA, basically the techniques that we have for basically like antigen detection or based on the nucleic acid. This one for the basically the uh, like the serological and the other things. This one is basically focusing on that. This one I have already covered. If you're going on the various media, what's the profile? That's the differential diagnosis. And then if you want to do a antimicrobial susceptibility testing, what are the HANA challenges there? Okay. Now samples, I have told you, if you know the clinical profile, you can have put all those samples in the different categories, like urethral, from urethra you can take on the urethral secretion, from the cervical os you can take a conjunctival secretion, you can take from the joint if that's involved. Okay, so just depending on the HANA profile, ophthalmia neonatorium we can take from the HANA conjunctiva. So these are the different samples that are required for the lab diagnosis. Then antigen detection is possible, and you should know also we have techniques which are molecular biology techniques which are basically based on the nucleic acid detection. So you should know these NAT techniques are there and the other things are there, but you should know essentially out here that a smear examination just by a gram stain might be a challenging thing. Okay. Then this column deals with the serology or with the antibody diagnosis. You should know this one is not a good status because many times we are not able to make a good HANA specificity out it. Then this thing, the media picture I already covered. Then when you talk about the antimicrobial susceptibility, you should know the drug resistance is a challenge. So many times we got to be knowing whether the microbe that you have isolated is a beta lactamase producer or not. So you have different techniques to be looking on that. This is an overview of the HANA treatment. Neisseria gonorrhoeae, you should know. Currently, most of them are penicillinase producers. So either you can use a ceftriaxone or a cefixime for the treatment. Then alternatives, you have azithromycin or doxycycline. You also have in the category of the quinolones, ciprofloxacin, ofloxacin, gatifloxacin. So that's the profile that we need for the managing this. Now another thing you should see is, like we were discussing in the clinical profile today, the clinical case that we discussed, why we were not able to isolate the Neisseria gonorrhoeae. I told you certain things. One, ideally we should have a chocolate agar or a Thayer-Martin media. Then you have to do an extended period incubation, okay, at least 36 to 48 hours, because the HANA colony will be taking that much time. And if you do a reading at 24 hours, you'll give a false negative result. And if you're not providing a 5% CO2 for isolation, your result is going to be negative. Okay, so that's the reason. Unless you provide these conditions, you'll get a false negative result from the culture. What rapid diagnostic technique you can do a clinical sample? Already told you gonococcal antigen in the various specimens you can use by enzyme link techniques or by fluorescent techniques. Then you should know all the NAT techniques. They are also available for the nucleic acid. Now another important thing you should know is what's the reservoir of Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Now you should know is both men and women can be infected, but the women, they play a bigger role in the epidemiology in the reservoir. Huh? The reason is obvious. Huh? Because why they play a big role is because majority of the times a woman who's infected with Neisseria gonorrhoeae is going to be asymptomatic. So she'll not come to a doctor, but she'll be responsible for the transmission of the disease to all the people who are in touch with her, okay, who interact with her, okay. So that's important as far as the reservoir of Neisseria gonorrhoeae is concerned. Another thing, very simple thing, is it possible for a woman infected with Neisseria gonorrhoeae to be asymptomatic? Yes. So the importance we'll discuss later, okay. The next, briefly, what's the mode of infection of gonorrhea? It's primarily a venereal disease, okay. So these are things about the epidemiology you should understand is the fomites don't play an important role in the transmission. The other social factors might be playing, like broken houses, sexual disharmony, and other things. Then, what complications can occur in a woman who's been infected with Neisseria gonorrhoeae but has remained asymptomatic? So, just because the asymptomatic is like from from a clinical point of view, but you should know that women, if you do an investigation, might be having a very severe pelvic inflammatory disease. Okay, so this might present like infertility or a ectopic pregnancy. Another thing, should this asymptomatic woman be treated? Yes, very much she should be treated so that she doesn't get into the stage of PID and she doesn't transmit the disease to all the people who come in contact with her. Just one thing, just for interest's sake, we were talking about the resistance in the Neisseria gonorrhoeae. You should know what is PPNG. Okay, it's just like for interest's sake. Okay, a lot of people they say this is penicillinase producing Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Okay, what are the factors which have led to a lot of this positivity of the PPNG? A lot of people use chemoprophylaxis, especially the prostitutes. The drugs are easily available without prescription. Don't take the full course of antimicrobials. In the lab, the strain gets exposed to vancomycin, and a lot of changes in the cultural practices like homosexuality makes the gonococcus exposed to bile acids, fatty acid. In the male rectum, it's getting exposed to many of these agents. Virulent factors for the pathogenicity, basically there are two. One is a lipo-oligosaccharide, which leads to the inflammation. Okay, that's one of the important things which is there. And obviously the pili. Without the pili on the Neisseria gonorrhoeae, the strain cannot adhere to the mucosa. Pathogenesis, initiation by sexual contact. The pileated strains adhere to the mucosa. They get phagocytized in the local place and they do a damage. So inflammatory response causes release of cytokines. They do a local damage. Now, what other infections is the individual in this case prone to? Because having increased sexual activities, all the STDs, AIDS, syphilis, chlamydial infections. So all the partners of this case should be traced, and if they are positive, they should be treated. Lastly, why we don't have a good vaccine for this Neisseria gonorrhoeae? Because this frequently is a rearrangement of the pilin genes. So it's difficult to make a protective vaccine unlike tetanus, in which we can have a good response. Okay, so I think that's it for as far as the Neisseria gonorrhoeae is concerned. If you have any query, anything you want to discuss, you're most welcome, or we can finish the lecture. Anybody has any query or anything you want to talk or discuss about, you're most welcome. Or we can.
So you mentioned that females are generally asymptomatic. So how do we know that a person is carrier of it, or
See, actually,
like
that's why if you're attending the gynae clinics, many of the women who come, they come with the they attend the infertility clinics, So what happens is they don't have a presentation which we can monitor easily, Like a male is getting infected, he's going to have a discharge, okay? So female, like many of them are asymptomatic, okay? So only when they have a problem, then the woman will actually go in for an investigation, let's say ultrasound or anything else. Okay, so until she has a problem like ectopic pregnancy or infertility, it gets unnoticed. But we have to be actually, so many drives are there in the community and otherwise, in which we would like to detect the women who are having these problems. Okay, so that's the challenge. Okay, that's the challenge. They're leading to transmission of the disease. They also get have a PID themselves. So that's a challenge that we got to be having. We got to be addressing them. Okay, that's the challenge. Anybody else? Any query? Anything you want to talk about? Neisseria gonorrhoeae? Anything is not clear? I think it's one of the very simple, fundamental microbes which we can correlate, which we can understand, which has got a clinical implications. Anybody else? Anything you want to ask, you're most welcome. Anything about microbiology you want to ask, you're most welcome.
sir,
Uh-huh.
Sir, you told why the organism is not coming in urine. Can you please explain that thing again?
Okay. So I took a question. I think you just missed out. See, when we have fastidious organisms, and the lab which is actually cultivating or trying to isolate them doesn't know them, so they will not put up those conditions. Okay. Normally, we get organisms. We do basal media like blood agar and McConkey routinely we put. But if you want to isolate Neisseria gonorrhoeae, ideally you should have a chocolate agar or a Thayer Martin media with the antimicrobials. That's one thing. So that's not going to get routinely put up. Secondly, you got to make the environment CO2 present. Okay, the carbon dioxide has to be present about 5 or 2, about 5%, because this is a capnophilic organism. So if in the container which we are incubating the plates, the CO2 is not there, so your growth is not going to be good. And secondly, I told you this requires extended period of incubation. So if you just see the plate after 24 hours, you will say it's a false negative. But if you incubated that plate for 36 to 48 hours, you will find the colony. Okay. So that's the reason why this gets missed out. Okay. That gets missed out.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Any query? Anything you want to ask? Anybody else? No? Okay. Then we can take the attendance, right? Thank you. Just hold for a couple of minutes. We take the attendance, then we can go.